This is Michael Orrell of MobileLearn.com, and today we have the SCH i910 Omnia for Verizon Wireless. This is the CDMA version of the original i900 Omnia. You can see it looks very similar, apart from the Verizon logo up the top. It'd be hard-pressed to tell the difference between the two devices. On the front we have very few controls. There's just the call, send, and end buttons, along with the optical joystick controller, and we'll show you how that works a little bit later. On the side we have a dedicated camera shutter button for the 5-megapixel camera, volume control, and then a quick access button that defaults to bringing up the Samsung menu. The back's very plain, just the camera itself and the flash. On the other edge we have the headset port, power port, and then a loop for this lanyard that holds the optional stylus controller. It's a telescoping stylus, and it helps a little bit with the using the device, but quite honestly it kind of gets in the way, so we don't really keep that on there. If we slide the back cover of the device off, you can see the battery and then the compartment for the micro SD memory card slot. Battery has to be removed before you can swap out memory cards, which is a little bit of a pain. We'll start up the device by pressing on the optical joystick. You can see the somewhat familiar Samsung widget UI. Everything on the display can be moved around with a finger. Just take items and you drag them onto the widget bar or back off of the widget bar, and you can use your thumb to move up and down on the widget bar itself. Tapping on the arrow brings the bar out or puts it back into the hiding spot. Number of interesting little things here, but like music controls, but in general I'm not a real fan of the widget UI, because when you touch things, even when you're touching a button, you can all too easily move them around. They don't really stay into position. When you move things back into the widget bar, they get inserted in different orders depending on where you slide it back. It's a little bit hard to manage. Instead we prefer one of the other Samsung supplied home screens, which we're going to show you in a second. Personally, I greatly prefer this look for today's screen on the Omnia. It gives you quick access to a lot of different base icons like your MMS, email, SMS, call log, and contacts and things like that. Plus easy access to the Samsung menu. Samsung menu is a nice finger-friendly menu that you can also access just by pressing this button on the upper right-hand side. 2 pages to the main menu itself. Tapping here on the bottom switches through them. There's also a user section. You can define shortcuts yourself. You hit edit, go through and find one of the icons you want to drag on. Just drag it in there into an empty spot. Hit OK. Now the shortcut menu has been changed. Go back to the main menu here. You can use this to get to things like, the regular Programs app. It's all finger scrollable, and then there's a little control here on the side for skipping ahead. It doesn't work as smoothly as some of the HTC developed things, but Samsung is catching up with the finger scrolling. And speaking of the finger scrolling, one thing that the original Omnia didn't have is support for scrolling through regular menus and such. So this is, again, catching up with HTC a bit. You can use it to scroll through the Programs menus here. You can use it to scroll through messaging inboxes. It's a lot handier. Of course, there's also the optical mouse controller. You can see if I move my finger around on the optical joystick, I can use a mouse pointer. I have to admit that this version of the mouse pointer doesn't seem to work as smoothly, but it works pretty well in general. And if you go into settings, you can switch it back to the default mode, which is for a joystick. And when set as a joystick, moving up and down goes left and right on the controller. It's a little hard to control though. You can see sometimes it moves multiple items. You can actually get some fast scrolling out of it. But in general I prefer to use a finger and the mouse pointer mode. Between a fingernail and the mouse pointer, you have pretty good control on how things work. Here's a quick look at the camera application. Pretty fast focusing. Controls are pretty easy. Everything shows up on the left and right edge of the display. You can easily turn on the flash, change the autofocus mode, for macro focusing or whatever like that. Change exposure, screen resolution. Very easy to use. Takes pretty nice photos. You'll see that the photo viewer supports swipes for moving back and forth from one image to the next. The 400 by 240 pixel display on the Omnia has an auto rotation sensor. There are a number of different transition effects. You can pick one you like or let the phone choose randomly, which is what it's doing now. You can see it'll rotate in any of the four directions, so if for whatever reason you like holding the phone upside down, it'll work that way.